This is the 47th President of the U.S. Get on the groove line on today's 30 with Tony.
Well, hi, Kemosabe's. It's Tony D'Angelo. It is 30 with Tony, March 14th, 2024, Ada Domini in the year of our Lord. So happy to have you here. So happy for all the wonderful support you have given me here on 30 with Tony and on the broadcast of the Lee Elsey Show. And I'm so very grateful for you. I endeavor today to put together a show that will be informative, entertaining, and will provoke you to think and to become involved and to grow. And that's really what I endeavor to do here. And I like to mix it up. I like to throw in some really boss music and a couple of classic clips because I think that's interesting, kind of gives us a perspective of the world that we always should be singing and laughing and, going about our business as joyfully as we possibly can. And some days, believe me, it's not joyful at all, but I try to remind myself, and therefore I believe it's probably helpful to remind us all. And on this show today, Connecticut is just such a target-rich environment for so many things gone wrong that it's like pick from any one. And what I endeavor to do, as I've said before on this show, is to give you something that perhaps you've heard about, perhaps you've read about, but maybe perhaps another perspective that you haven't seen. Now, I can't guarantee that you haven't seen it. The only thing I can guarantee is through my research and through my cursory pass of things, I haven't seen it. So therefore, I'm going to share it with you. So let's get to it. We have a lot of business to discuss today. Let me ask you something. Do you like your home? Do you like where you live? Maybe you don't like your home. Maybe you want a better one, but maybe you have a vision for a home that you'd like to live in that would be your home, that would have those things that you like. Each and every one of us are different. We have different things that we prefer. And that's really something that in the society that we all know that, we were told we could have if we did certain things. And if we applied ourselves to the exercise, and that would allow us to have a home and to have a home that we like and or trade up for another home. And that's basically what, excuse me, what is really a large part of what they call the American dream. Now, I'm not going to tell you that owning a home is all, lollipops and rainbows. Believe me, it's not. But it is something that you can have and do and share and open to your friends and raise children and get married and run a business out of, and all these things that are really fundamentally very good things, and that's really a part of being an American. Now, I'm going to show you something today where there's a whole lot of people who want to take this right away from you. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are. I don't care where your parents came from. I don't care about any of that. But if you aspire to what I've just said, they want to take that all away from you, and they want you to live their way. And there's a whole lot of people in government who basically, you've got a bunch of people in government say, yeah, that's great, go for it. Let's just go and do exactly what these people are saying we should do. And there's a whole bunch of other people in government who really are, quote unquote, a part of the pushback, but the pushback is not equivalent to that of a large feather duster. So allow me to elucidate. I'm going to get right down to it. Now that the preliminaries are involved, we're going to do a share screen. And bear with me for just a second, and here we go. Here's your culprit. It's known as Connecticut House Bill 5390 in the 2024 General Assembly, and it is now, I guess, pending in the Joint Planning and Development Committee as of this particular writing. And we're not going to get into the actual nuances of the bill. You'll find that we don't have to as such. So if I read the summary, it's to provide financial incentives for municipalities that adopt certain transit-oriented development policies and to coordinate related state funds through the Office of Responsible Growth. Establish the Interagency Council on Housing Development, direct the State Responsible Growth Coordinator to establish a fund for the expansion of water and sewerage infrastructure, and to allow the coordinator to provide additional funding for certain infrastructure projects and to include transit-oriented developments in the definition of housing growth zone. So let's take that in human speak. What are they talking about? Look at part one, to provide financial incentives for municipalities that adopt certain transit-oriented development policies and to coordinate related state funds through the Office of Responsible Growth. In other words, do what we're telling you to do, and we're going to give you a nice big fat bribe in order to do it, and to coordinate related state funds through the Office of Responsible Growth. This is the autonomous office coming out of the center of the state, telling all the municipalities as to what they should and must do with respect to housing in their particular neighborhoods. And there ain't nothing anybody locally can do about it, as such, at least not easily. Now, number two, establish the Interagency Council on Housing Development. Okay, so we're going to introduce a bureaucracy. Welcome to Connecticut. Now, of course, the bureaucracy always has your best interests in mind. I mean, did you read Bob Swick's article this past Saturday on taxes and taxes in Connecticut? See, they want to take your money. They want to take your money. They want to tax every single thing that you have, but they want to take away your rights. They want to take away your ability to speak. They want to take away your ability to vote, but that's okay. They know better. We don't. Let's move on. Now, to direct the State Responsible Growth Coordinator to establish a fund for the expansion of water and sewerage infrastructure. This is a new thing, and this is something called water equity. Water is becoming a scarce commodity. Now, I don't know if that's absolutely true. I mean, I can tell you here in northeastern Connecticut, all it's really been doing for a year is raining or snowing. On days it doesn't rain, it snows and vice versa. But I believe part of the global warming contention, I'm not going to say hype or tripe, but is that since we are globally warming, we're running out of water, and we want to make sure that, quote unquote, all the white Caucasians don't get all the water, and all the people of color and in the inner cities and everywhere else, dry up into prunes. We've got to make sure that doesn't happen. So we're going to have water equity. Now, there's a lot you can do in water. There's a lot you can do with water. There's a lot you can put in water to make things happen a certain way. When I was a kid watching Dragnet, Sergeant Friday would always say that if you had a cup of LSD and you walked over into Laurel Dam in Los Angeles and you threw that in, the entire city would go crazy for a week. I mean, basically, that's what it is. So it's, I have not researched that particular provision of the bill, but when I read things like that, my antenna goes up. And then number 4 is interesting: to allow the coordinator to provide additional funding for certain infrastructure projects and to include transit-oriented districts in the definition of housing growth zone. So in other words, this autonomous person here is going to pull the strings and call the shots, and that's the purpose of what's happening here. Because after all, they're entitled to take your money, they're entitled to tell you what to do, and they know better than you. So I'm going to stop the share here for a moment, if I may. And what I have done is very thankful to my Twitter pal, Mike, who alerted me to this, is I have the state video here from the hearing on this particular bill. It was held on March 5th, 2024. And I want to show you, I mean, as they always say, which is absolutely positively true, the things you don't want to see made are sausage and laws. But here, the sausage making is so critical, not criminal. I'm going to show you some things, and I want you to draw your own conclusions. So we're going to go to the hearing. The first part of this hearing is a young lady working for Desegregate Connecticut. Now, Desegregate Connecticut is that, whatever you want to call it, that Fox little nonprofit. It's not even really a nonprofit. It is a dangling participle of the Regional Plan Association, which gets its funding from, the Open Society Network, which gets its funding from Pappy Soros, in this whole thing to rework our American way of life. But this young lady we're going to speak to has some very definite ideas as to how, and not we're going to speak to, we're going to listen to, as to how this is going down. So bear with me for a second, and we're going to get right to the video, or as Warner Wolf would say on the Channel 2 News in New York years back. Let's go to the videotape.
Yes, I'm here. 1 second.
Welcome and thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon to the honorable co-chairs and members of the committee. My name is Sydney Elkhay. I am a Manchester resident, and I'm here today to testify in favor of HB 5390, an act concerning transit-oriented communities. I work as the transit-oriented communities organizer at desegregate-CT, although today I'm here to speak for myself. My testimony may remind you of the testimony that I gave last session, as there have been no substantial steps taken to remedy the housing crisis in our state in the last year. There are a lot of reasons that I'm in support of this bill. However, one of the main reasons, as a recent UConn graduate, is the sheer lack of housing that currently exists in the state. According to CT Insider, Connecticut has the lowest vacancy rate for rental housing in the nation, with only 2.1% of rentals being vacant as of 2022. Connecticut also has the second highest number of young people aged 18 to 34 living with their parents out of any state, with 41.5% of people in that demographic still living at home. Those two statistics are connected. I've found that data as well to be accurate from my own experience. After graduation, I discovered that I could not afford to move out within the state, nor were there a large amount of housing even available. Certainly, the number of one-bedroom apartments, which is the kind of housing I would be searching for, was negligible. Many people I know have experienced the same issue, with nearly all of my friends moving back in with their parents after college graduation. Most of the college graduates that I know who do not currently live with their families have moved out of state, because housing designed for young adults doesn't exist in Connecticut. Few young people can afford both the skyrocketing cost of housing as well as the costs associated with car ownership that is necessary in every part of our state. At my age, my parents had moved into their own house in Connecticut, had married, and had begun to have kids. My generation lives with family members and roommates, unable to afford the lifestyle of our parents in our home state. Each year, thousands of students graduate from the incredible universities that we have in our state, ready to enter the workforce, only to find that there's nowhere for them to live. If we as a state actually want our college graduates to stay in their communities and use their education to the benefit of Connecticut, we have to build housing for them. Otherwise, young adults will move to places where they can find housing, which will be out of state. Work Live Ride is designed to create more housing by making it easier for towns to develop denser housing near transit. This will allow for additional units to be built while also creating housing diversity beyond large homes on large lots. This would enable towns to build more of the housing that young people look for, such as small apartments, which would enable us to move out of our childhood homes while still remaining in our communities. The creation of additional housing units would also allow for the supply to catch up with demand, thus lowering housing prices and making it more affordable for the people who are searching for housing. If this bill does not pass, Connecticut will continue to not build housing and will remain unable to support additional households. Our state will continue to lack housing that is affordable, making it inhospitable for young people. If we want Connecticut to thrive, we can't afford to drive away our next generation of workers and taxpayers. But with our current zoning laws and lack of housing, that is exactly what we are doing. Thank you for your time.
Senator Fazio.
Thank you for your testimony. I think, it's always good to start in places where we agree on things. And I think creating a fertile ground for building housing, it would be a positive in this state.
Now, Kemosabe's, what you've just seen there is the testimony of a young lady. Her name is Sydney L.K. I was taking notes on the video as I was watching it. Let me just say this at the outset. I would never, ever, ever discourage the willingness or the ability of a young person to speak out. I too, believe it or not, was a young person at one point in time, and I wanted to be heard for my views. So I really applaud Ms. LK for getting to the hearing, albeit by Zoom, and letting us know what was on her mind. So kudos for that. But in this particular matter, I want to actually go through her line of thinking, not to pick on the kid, not to do that, but to tell you really the mindset of what's taking place out there. And to me, it's, well, let's look at it. She says she is involved in the administration of Desegregate Connecticut, but yet she comes as herself. Now, that either tells me that two things. Either she's so committed to what she believes in, she would do it even if she were not involved in the administration of Desegregate Connecticut, or, she's shilling for the House. I don't know. God will judge her, but that's the first thing that I hear when somebody says, well, I come on behalf of this organization, but I'm really here for myself. That kind of puts me in a quizzical frame of mind. Now, Ms. LK says there is a housing crisis and a lack of housing. She cites a statistic saying that there's a 2% vacancy rate in the state of Connecticut. I don't know if that's true, false, indifferent, black, brown, green, or otherwise, but I will say something that it is living hell for landlords to operate in Connecticut. So really, if I want to make a business out of going into rental housing, a very tough business, by the way, if I want to do that and I've got some money and I'm able to borrow some money, don't you think I'm going to go to a much more friendly state where I can do this rather than being besieged by some of the most numbskullery policies that, you're ever going to look at. So perhaps Ms. Elke, that has something to do with it. Again, not to pick on Ms. Elke. Let's move on. She says a lot of her, peers are living with their parents. Well, ain't that really a good thing? I mean, it's really a time where you can put together your money, you can borrow the car, you can get something out of the refrigerator, you can study, you can get a degree, you can learn something perhaps valuable, because odds are if you went to a college in Connecticut, you didn't learn anything that was marketable, and you can use that time to do something else. But that may seem kind of snarky on my part, but the fundamental thing is that kids live with their parents because they can't find employment in order to grant them the ability to live on their own. Now, for all these kids that come and say, I can't stand living with my parents are this, my parents are that, talk to a married person who's in a marriage that really he or she wishes that they weren't in. I do this a lot in my, professional life, if you want to call what I do a profession. And they're 50 times more miserable than you are. Now, they had the inclination to go do it in and of themselves, but they're not very happy as to where it ended up. Now, I'm not saying you're right and they're wrong, or they're right. I'm not saying any of that, but no one really guarantees you the right to a rose garden and a perfect life. You have to make that for yourself. And sometimes you got to do something which is entirely, shall I say, an unpopular sentiment known as sacrifice. And you've got to sacrifice to get to something else to build a better world. So, Sydney, I get it. I do get it. But the real reason is that we don't have an economy in this state, and we don't have marketable wages, and nor do we have our colleges teaching to do for these marketable jobs. We do not have a happening economy in the state of Connecticut, regardless of what King Governor Ned Lamont the Unaccountable and his Connecticut Democrat Party tells you. That is a very small universe benefiting a very small number of people at the expense of everything else. Some other comments. She says a lot of her cohorts, her colleagues, her peers have moved out of state. Yeah, there's economies out of state. There's things happening. There's jobs you can get somewhere else. There's growth. There's the ability to get a home. There's the ability to get a car if you want it. Or if you want to live in an inner city and you don't like driving, you can move to an inner city, but the choices are yours. The options are there. What Ms. Elke is saying is we have to restructure the world to meet her particular preferences and that of her, her peer group. I don't want to live the way Ms. Elke says I should live. Now, I have lived that way, in that manner, in that fashion. At the time I was doing it, it was highly convenient for me to walk to a train and take a train to a city and have a job and to hopefully put aside a little money and to get married and to grow a married life and that sort of thing. But I choose not to do that anymore. And guess what? I'm every bit as much of an American as Ms. Elke is. The thought processing, which we're going to see here, is a much greater thought processes that Ms. Elke is really considering, is that you must conform the world to meet my preferences. That's like me going into a restaurant, into a steak restaurant, and demanding chicken chow mein. I mean, America's a place of choices. It's not a place of, you tell me what you want and I've got to go do it. And a couple of other things. She said the quiet part out loud, in that if we have more housing, it's going to make housing more affordable. It's also going to devalue the investments of the people who have worked very hard to keep their homes up, to have good schools, to send their kids to college, to stay out of trouble, to keep things safe and clean. And really what they have to show for it after 30, 40, 50 years at the grindstone is, I have a house that I can sell. I can give to my children, or I can, lease it out and go live in an apartment in Florida, and/or you have an asset for all of this. Now, I'm not going to tell you home ownership is better than renting and this and that, different strokes for different folks. But basically what Ms. LK has been taught to say through her experiences is we've got to raise the supply so we can devalue everything around where more people can have opportunity. And there is a big cost to that. And what about the incentive of the people who have worked very hard to have their homes? And I mean, it's like it, lump it, or dump it. I'm going to hold that part of it. But that was Ms. LK's testimony. And if you'll bear with me, we're going to move on with the program right after this.
Oh, I'm so ready. Just one more kiss. Come on, baby. Running in the beehive, having fun. Every time you kiss me, hit me like a bun. Ready, 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 oh my. Hey, I want just a little what you got. Sock it to me, baby, baby. Sock it to me, baby, baby. You gotta sock it to me, baby. Sock it to me, baby. Sock it to me, baby. Sock it. And the blue, my baby. Every time you shake it, girl, I like it more. Give me, give me, give me, give me, give me something sweet. Knock me, ooh, off my feet. Sock it to me, baby, baby. Sock it to me, baby, but baby, you gotta sock it to me, baby. Sock it to me, baby. Sock it to me, baby. Sock it. Hey! Ooh, I get a buzz now. I'm getting whacked down. Oh, yeah, I'm flying high.
Well, thanks, Kemasabis. Thanks for staying with us. And we have a lot of work to do on this particular segment. So we are now going to hear from an older woman. Her name is Ann O'Brien. And allow me to elucidate here. Ms. O'Brien works for a nonprofit. And the nonprofit is the Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, based in New Haven, Connecticut. They've been around since 2018. And it's the acronym is IRIS. IRIS empowers refugees and immigrants to become self-sufficient and, let me highlight that, integrated into their new communities. At the same time, newcomers enrich our communities, making this a better place for all of us. And you read down the web pages, and it's very colorful and very informative. And they deal with housing, employment, health, legal, education, and case management. We will listen to Ms. O'Brien's testimony in just a moment, but I'm not going to spoil the plot for you, basically, but I think when you hear Ms. O'Brien, you'll get a much better and more focused idea as to where we're headed. So here is the testimony of Ms. O'Brien on March 5th, 2024.
Known at this time. Thank you for your testimony. We have a next speaker, Ann O'Brien.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Ann. Good to
Thank
see you.
you. Thank you very much. Chairman, Chairwoman, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and ranking members. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to make this testimony on behalf of IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services. I'm testifying in support of WLR House Bill 5390. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping refugees and immigrants and other displaced families restart their lives and enrich our communities in Connecticut. IRIS provides several key services, including employment training, legal aid, access to education and health services, as well as case management and housing assistance. We're committed to forging an equitable community with equal opportunity and housing options for the immigrants and refugees that we welcome to Connecticut in partnership with our federal government, who has invited them to resettle here. While we're based in New Haven with offices in Hartford as well, IRIS also partners with over 50 community groups across the state of Connecticut to welcome refugees and to assist asylum seekers in their goals for self-sufficiency and safety for their community, their families. We partner with these 50+ communities because those communities want diverse communities enriched by this noble American tradition. We believe it's the most noble American tradition of welcoming those that are persecuted and fleeing safety from conflict and other displacement around the world, and helping them to pursue this American dream in the safety of Connecticut towns. Immigration is foundational to the success of our state. Roughly 15% of the Connecticut population hails from another country, or 1 in every 7 residents. We know that immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers enhance the culture and vitality of our towns and cities. This lies at the core of our American values. But what's acknowledged less is the fact that immigrants also act as an engine for our state's economy, contributing over $2 billion per year in state and local tax revenue and increasing money circulation by nearly $18 billion. Without the housing to meet the needs of our immigrant families, we risk losing that which makes Connecticut great: diverse, inclusive communities and reliable, good-paying jobs. We need to take proactive steps to ensure that these families are both attracted to Connecticut and able to build their lives here. This commitment starts with the construction of a significant amount of new housing, and the construction of new housing necessitates statewide zoning reform. We believe that House Bill 5390 will help achieve this vision. By increasing development around transit stations and downtowns, we can help diversify housing options in communities to which immigrants and refugees currently do not have access. Transit-oriented development is particularly important since, according to the Pew Research Center, immigrants are among the populations most likely to use public transit. We see this every day as we welcome new refugees, and they immediately ask how quickly they can start their employment, and they want to be able and they need to be able to use public transit. The modest increase in housing availability and affordability in our transit towns lowers housing costs overall, granting immigrants the freedom to resettle in all corners of the state, as our 50+ community groups want to see happen. At IRIS,
3 minutes are now complete. Please summarize.
Great. At IRIS, we believe that this House Bill 5390 will help to make this goal a reality, and it will bring families with young children that will then make the next generation of communities in Connecticut that much stronger. I really appreciate the opportunity to make this testimony, and it's an honor to be a part of this panel today.
Thank you, Senator Fazio. For a second, he was the chair, but he's back to ranking member.
I had my one shining moment, but heavy wears the crown. Ms. O'Brien, thank you for your testimony. So your clients, I assume they don't only include refugees who went through the refugee immigration system. I assume it includes other types of immigrants as well, right?
Oh, yes. We work with the broadest range of displaced people Some most recent examples that I'm sure will be top of mind include those that came from Ukraine that technically do not have refugee status, but have another type of status that's called humanitarian parole. We work with those individuals as well as our fellow colleagues from Afghanistan that were evacuated and worked for the U.S. military, and many other types of immigrants and asylum seekers.
Yeah, and I assume when you say broadest range possible, that in of clientele, that includes immigrants regardless of legal status and documentation.
Yes, so we help based upon the most vulnerable, but also based upon the resources that we have. The vast majority of the folks that we are able to help with securing housing are those that come through our federal resettlement program, as well as those that are granted housing are those that come through our federal resettlement program, as well as those that are granted different types of humanitarian parole, such as those coming from Ukraine or from many different countries around the world.
Yeah, and many of us, our families have immigrant backgrounds, and we recognize that this country is dependent so much on an effective immigration system to make it as great as it is. And certainly we want a logical and strong, but also a logical legal immigration system where we have enforcement, not just at the borders, but also in the interior as well. Something that's fair, but also effective for both, our state's interests, our nation's interests, as well as the well-being of our immigrant populations. I get concerned that if we're making policy with the security concerns we currently have at the border, with the stress that's putting on cities and communities across the country, just on the back door of my district in New York, especially, that we're running the risk of straining resources, straining the well-being and safety and orderliness of our cities and towns and neighborhoods across Connecticut as well. I did not anticipate this point of view in support of Work, Live, Ride, so it's a bit novel to me. But I think it's also important that we balance the different considerations, and we want to be compassionate and we want to care for all sorts of people in need, especially refugees who went through who achieved refugee status legally through the federal government. But we also have to protect the interests of and safety and well-being and resources in our state for legal residents here, when you see many cities and states across the country being strained in their resources by kind of the problems we're seeing at the border and so on. So this is kind of a novel point of view with regard to supporting Work, Live, Ride, and it's something we'll keep under consideration. But I think it's also important to consider all different costs and benefits that could be imposed on our state and our districts here in Connecticut. So thank you for your testimony.
You're very welcome. I think it's also important to note that my testimony comes not just from us as an organization, but from over 50 communities around the state that have partnered with us through community groups to actually welcome and resettle families from many different types of immigrant status in their communities, and that they too have given testimony in support of similar types of bills because they want to see this happen in their towns. And these are folks that have come forward of their own accord to do this type of work.
I could say a lot of things here, but I'm going to give you my first thought. Senator Ryan Fazio, where were you when the lights went out? Do you really, really, really think this is novel? Everywhere you look in this country, we're being overrun by illegal migrants. In Massachusetts, you've had a number of people, now that's not far from where I'm sitting, you've had a number of people come out and say that they believe it's a good idea for people with the room in their cushy suburban homes, their words, not mine, to house illegal migrants as a, shall we say, a societal duty. The lieutenant governor of the state of Massachusetts, Kim Driscoll, went as far as to make this a press conference and to encourage children to tell their parents this is something they should do and that sort of thing. So when you see housing and you see money going into housing and you follow the bouncing ball of the Ms. Elkays and the Ms. O'Briens saying that, you know, we need this housing and this is critical, do you not give consideration for the people already in these areas, owning homes, you know, responsible jobs, sending their kids to school, staying out of trouble? Do you not give consideration for them as to the impact on them? You're enamored with the fact of, you know, well, housing is important. Okay. But where we have this, and okay, maybe I'm jumping on your case, Ryan. Maybe I'm doing that unfairly, but let's just say that I am. If in fact I am, why are you not at that point yelling and screaming and saying this is a fraud, this is a sham, this is nothing but a means of lowering the real estate values, of taking the worth of the middle class and devaluating it by putting in housing that really isn't any kind of housing at all, but it's just going to increase the supply and make the area a least attractive place to live? And, you know, say something forceful to your colleagues and to Ms. O'Brien saying, you know, this is a sham, this is a mess, let's stop it. Now, if you're going to invite people into a community to grow, now I realize it, given the way that, you know, Father Time, which is the undefeated opponent of us all, I'm not going to be around in 50 years. I understand that. But if you're going to grow a young population base, you've got to grow employment, and you've got to grow initiative, and you've got to grow achievement. You do that by safe communities, lower taxes, and making a place a good place to live, to grow and attract a family. And, you know, families, guess what? In order to give birth, you need a woman, because men cannot have babies. I'm very, very sorry to disappoint you if you're out there believing that. But when you see what's happening here, and this is where I get very angry with people in our legislature, especially Republicans, who, at least when I read their resumes, I say, these are intelligent men and women. They should be getting this, but they're not. It takes me maybe 30 minutes to go on the computer and say, what's the motivation here? What's causing this thing to happen? So just to show you where this is all at, let's do a little, shall we say, scouting report. Screen share. Okay, here's Ms. O'Brien. This is her LinkedIn page. She is the Director of Sponsorship at IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services. And if you read down her career, she's been active about 30 some odd years. And she's, whatever she has done, she has been involved in IRIS and community engagement and other nonprofits. And she is a, I imagine her background is in social work. She also has worked on giving campaigns, and she worked for St. Louis University. Some other experiences she's had, and I'm taking this kind of at first blush, she a lot of community work. You know, she is a professional. Actually, I'm reading down the same things which I already did. She got her first employment in Ernst & Young, a multinational accounting firm, and working in hospital planning and physician practices, largely in inner city settings. So this is a person that has been around a long period of time in this game. much like Pete Harrison of Desegregate Connecticut, these are not quote unquote these local grassroots activists. These are professionals with backgrounds that are well trained and well schooled in the whole thing of revamping the way that we all live. Now, of course, the way we all live should be a matter of our own choice and should not be dictated to us by a bunch of numbskulls who have a mission. Now, what's the mission here? The mission is dollars. The mission is always dollars. The IRIS, Integrated Refugee and Immigrant Services, is part of something called the Community Sponsorship Hub. This is where the money is, honey. These are the people who want to make your particular life different. And they are part of the much greater Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. And this basically is one arm of the effort to change the way we all live, work, breathe, eat, drive, and get transported. And the other part is the money going into the developments, going into these transit-oriented places, which basically comes from the BlackRocks of the world, which involves the Soroses and which involves the developers, because they wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't money involved. Now, what they do is that they'll take a very young lady like a Ms. Elke and give her some things to believe and have her out there parroting for the cause. And then you'll have a more seasoned operative like a Ms. O'Brien, who will go out and tell you things in, shall we say, more technical terms. You know, the 50 groups. I mean, what are the 50 groups? Are they 50 groups of scholars? Are they 50 groups of lunatics? Are they 50? I don't know, but I'm supposed to sit there and nod my head and say there's 50 groups. A little bit of business here in the Rockefeller Foundation. They are a major funder. This is from Influence Watch, well known, of liberal advocacy and public policy efforts, providing major support to New America, a left of center think tank, the Urban Institute, a left of center hybrid civil rights group and policy advocacy organization, and the Funders Corporation and Civic Participation, a project coordinating left of center advocacy on census and electoral issues, and among other left of center interests. I'm going to stop the share here. And basically what we're seeing is we're seeing the money come in from big left causes, some coming to the people, the Ms. O'Briens and the Ms. Elkes, to tell us what we need to do, you know, in our state legislatures. Buffalo state senators, none of whom I'm seeing are pounding the table right now, yelling and screaming, saying, this is a farce and a crock and it needs to stop. This is really fundamental to the destruction of our state, and we've got to stop it. If we're going to have housing, we're going to make the rights of landlords, you know, greater, and we're going to have rewards for good housing, and we're going to have industry and better tax policy. Oh no, you've got to get housing. And you've got to have more housing and to have more people that are coming, refugees, migrants, illegals, lower income people, and just have them there because you're providing a place for them. But yet, even so, you don't have a, you know, place to employ them, basically. And that's basically it. And I do know, and I have on authority, that a number of people, homeowners who have worked very hard to preserve and protect and defend their houses, are trying to get the attention of Republican senators to say, what the hell are you doing? And they're getting dead ear. Now, I don't know if this is like, quote unquote, a face-saving exercise at this point, because for Ryan Fazio to come out and say this is novel, no, Ryan, it's not novel. There's nothing novel here. I mean, this kind of thing has been going on now for a goodly number of years, and it actually, if you want to get hyper technical about it, goes back to the first administration of Barack Hussein Obama. And here is where Connecticut has to make up their mind as to what they are. Are they a place that encourages business, industry, safe communities, home ownership, the ability to travel as you would see fit in a gas car, a motorcycle, an EV, or however you want to go, a moped, a slingshot? Or do we all have to acquiesce to this new world order, which comes from the Soroses and the BlackRocks and all these people? Look, it ain't coming from these nonprofit people. Politicians are just not that intelligent to dream up something like this, but they're being used as useful tools in order to get us all to believe and to guilt us out that we're these horrible, racist Caucasian people that don't care about these people. Look, immigration. Let me tell you about immigration, Turkey. My grandfather was a WOP, W-O-P, without passport, without papers, came to this country and raised a family of 6, one of whom was his youngest son who had epilepsy, who raised 3 boys with advanced degrees. So I believe in immigration. I believe in the fact that we need good immigrants here. I had a DACA girl, okay? Probably the best kid I ever had. For a year until some state-connected firm bribed her and then laid her off. But that said, we need good immigrants here because honestly, truthfully, we got a bunch of lazy-ass Americans that won't do anything. Believe me, white Appalachia is a real thing. I don't live that far from it. But that all being as it is, but what they're talking about here is we're just going to lower the housing and bring everybody in because we need to house them. This is making us competitive. Oh, God help us all. And if we don't get to a place where we expose this, and if we don't get to a place where we start embarrassing elected officials for what they're not doing and what they don't know or what they don't care to admit, don't hit them, don't hurt them, don't swear at them, but embarrass them, because this is really, I'm talking your house, I'm talking your possessions, and what I have said, and I will say it again, and I said this on the Wayne Allen Root show, and I said this on the Lee Elsey show. The fundamental question that every single person must ask in 2024 of every politician, of every political office, because this is a 10th Amendment issue, is, power to the states, is do you support the housing of illegal migrants in one's home? And would you ever mandate it in the guise of a public health emergency? You think I'm kidding? My idiot state, they're pointing the clouds and they're saying we need a climate change emergency. This is not Buck Rogers stuff. This is not a tall tale. This is very real. And this is what's happening here. And I become so incredibly angry at, quote unquote, the system. First of all, the useless taxpayer supported media, which tells you absolutely nothing about this. And also the political system who want to play nice, who want to say, oh, we need housing and that sort of thing. Yeah, okay, we need housing. Great. How about, private landlord incentives to do things right other than villainizing them and demonizing them? Let's start there. Let's start with just what's worked so well for so many years. The civil rights war is over, but, we've got to go and we've got to fight this whole thing all over again. There's more useful tools here in this box than Stanley ever made. It's Tony D'Angelo here on 30 with Tony. We'll be back with the close of the show right after this.
Your
fun seekers. Since we like to mix fun with business, please enjoy another video classic clip, courtesy of the producers of 30 with Tony.
This is Barry. Today's classic clip is from A Night in Casablanca, starring the Marx Brothers.
Monsieur, but. Sound like a motorboat. Give me. Hello? What's that, sir? You've been up in your room 3.5 hours and your trunks haven't arrived? Well, put your pants on. Nobody will know the difference. Out of the way, please. Sorry now. Clerk. Mr. Cornblow to you. Have you a suite for me and my wife? Your wife, eh? Yes, and we'd like something very elegant. I see. Have you got any baggage? Of course. It's on its way over from the airfield. In all the years I've been in the hotel business, that's the phoniest story I've ever heard. I suppose your name is Smith. No, it's Smythe, spelled with a Y. Oh, that's the English version. Mr. and Mrs. Smythe and no baggage. Let me see your marriage license. What? How dare you, sir? How do you like that? Puts a Y in Smith and expects me to let him in the hotel with a strange name. Strange dame? She is to me. I've never seen her before. Sir, you may not be aware of it, but I am president of the Morocco Laundry Company. You are? Well, take this shirt and have it back Friday. Mr. Smythe? Or Smith? This is a family hotel, and I suggest you take your business elsewhere. Sir, this lady is my wife. You should be ashamed. If this lady is your wife, you should be ashamed. You'll hear from me. Do that, even if it's only a postcard. Sir, my attorneys will be here in the morning. Yeah, well, they won't get a room either unless they got a marriage license.
Well, thanks, Kemosabe's. Thanks for staying with us in what I believe is a very rough and necessary subject, something we all need to know about and something we all need to pay more attention to because of the failures of what is represented to be government all around us. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the classic clip and maybe that put a smile on your face. But I have a story for you, actually a brief story in the interest of time. There is a Mexican man, actually he's not Mexican, he's half Mexican and half Chinese, and he walks around with one sneaker. What is his name? Answer, Wan Chu. Now, if you didn't laugh at that, there's no hope for you. I mean, we never, ever do things here to disparage people, but you know, we do things to make you chuckle, to make you laugh, to make you think. And if comedy offends you, frankly, I don't know if you're the kind of person I want to be around at all. But guess what? I have that choice. Even though you're trying to take so many choices away from me, you're not going to do it. And that's basically the way it is. It's Tony D'Angelo here on 30 with Tony. Thank you, Kemosabe's. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this show. And as Dick Clark would say, we'll be back to you next week, and so long.